Good morning, my dear students. Welcome to the class on history. In the previous class, I had explained to you the two different phases of Indian National Congress, the early nationalist and the assertive nationalist. Today, we are going to continue with the remaining topics of the chapter. The first topic that you are going to learn is about the partition of Bengal. Partition of Bengal, which means why was Bengal divided? What was the reason for the British people to divide the place called Bengal? And it happened in 1905, July 19th. 1905, July 19th, and it was done by the person called Viceroy Lord Curzon. He was the one who introduced this particular concept of dividing Bengal. And what was the reason for them to divide it? So they divided Bengal into two, that is the West Bengal and second is the East Bengal. West and the East. And the West Bengal side, those areas were filled with majority of Hindu population. The West Bengal, it was Hindu population, and here it was Muslims. This is how they divided the place called Bengal. Now, what was the reason told by the British people for the division of Bengal? They said Bengal was too big, and the division will give more opportunity for effective administration. Since Bengal was too big, it was very difficult for them for the administration. So they said, if you are able to divide Bengal into two, it will be easy for the administration. But what is the real reason for them to divide the place called Bengal? The real reason was that Bengal was a center of strong national movement, and they wanted to put the seeds of disunity between Hindus and the Muslims. This was the main reason why the Bengal was divided. To the people, the British people told, it is for the easy administration because Bengal was too big for them to handle the administration. But the main reason was Bengal was a center of national movement, so they wanted to divide the Hindus and the Muslims. But the division of Bengal or the partition of Bengal was severely criticized by the people. They did not accept this particular division of Bengal, and all sections of the society, whether which were educated, not educated, all of them stood against this particular partition of Bengal. They held various demonstrations, public gatherings or meetings were organized by the people to oppose this particular partition of Bengal. And this particular people of Bengal, they tied sacred threads, like we have got the Raksha Bandhan Day on which they tied the Ragis. In the same manner, people tied sacred threads on each other's wrist to show the unity and the solidarity. And October 16th, on which this particular partition happened, it was considered as a day of mourning. Mourning means sadness. So this is what you by the term called partition of Bengal that happened. The idea was put forward by Viceroy Lord Curzon in 1905, July 19th. The division of Bengal into two, West and the East. West dominated by the Hindus and the East dominated by the Muslims. And the reason told by the British people, it was for the easy administration. But the real reason was they wanted to divide the Hindus and the Muslims. Now, and the reaction of the people against this particular concept of a partition of a Bengal. Now let's move on to the next topic. There are two different methods introduced by the Congress. The first one is Swadeshi. That is the first point, first method. And second one is boycott. Now what are the meanings of these two terms? So there are two different methods used by the people. That is the first one, Swadeshi, which means of one's own country. That's the meaning of the term called Swadeshi, of one's own country. Of one's own country. And what was the aim of this particular concept of Swadeshi? The aim of this particular concept was to popularize the goods manufactured in India. Which means we do not depend on goods manufactured by other countries. Which means we wanted to popularize, the people of India wanted to popularize the goods manufactured in India. And boycott means say no to foreign goods. Boycott means say no to foreign goods, especially goods manufactured in Britain. So these are the two different methods. One is Swadeshi, which means of one's own country. Boycott means say no to foreign goods. And the people stopped using foreign goods and they began to use Indian made goods, and they burned the foreign clothes and they picketed the shops that are selling foreign goods. And there was active participation by women and the students. So this is what you mean the term called Swadeshi and boycott. Swadeshi means of one's own country. Boycott means say no to foreign goods. And how did the people accept this particular or these two concepts? Next one, what you are going to learn is about the division that happened or the split that happened in the Congress. That is known as Surat split. And what does it mean? Surat split, which means the struggle against the partition of Bengal, which means when Bengal was divided, there was unity between the early nationalists and the assertive nationalists. So during the time of partition of Bengal, there was complete unity between the early nationalists and the assertive nationalists. But there were differences with regard to the objectives and the methods used. Which means there were differences of opinion with regard to the objectives and the methods by the early nationalists and the assertive nationalists. So in 1907, there was something called there was this particular Congress session happened in Surat, in which there was a split that happened in the Congress. So during the time of partition of Bengal, there was complete unity between these two, the early nationalists and the assertive nationalists, but there were differences with regard to their objectives and the methods. So the split happened in 1907 in the Congress session that happened in Surat. So from that day onwards, which means from that particular session onwards, the early nationalists began to control the Congress, and the assertive nationalists said, yes, we will function from outside the Congress. But in 1916 again, during the Lucknow session, again these two groups were reunited again. So the Surat split that happened in 1907. The reason is differences with regard to their objectives and methods. So after the split, early nationalists said we will control the Congress. Assertive nationalists said we will function from outside the Congress. And these two were reunited in 1916 in the Lucknow session. If it is clear. Now the next topic that is known as Morley Minto reforms. What are the reforms called Morley Minto reforms? And why did British announce this particular reforms? To make the early nationalists happy, British announced so-called Indian Councils Act or Morley Minto reforms. So another term for this particular reforms is Indian Councils Act. Indian Councils Act or Morley Minto reforms. And there are two important points that are mentioned in this particular act. The first one, more members to be included. It means more Indians to be included in the Central Legislative Council and Provincial Legislative Council. It means more people must be included in the councils, the Central Legislative Council and Provincial Legislative Council. And second one is the, so more Indians to be included, more members to be included to the council. Second one, the introduction of a separate electorates. What does it mean? Separate electorates means for the Muslims there will be separate constituencies for the Muslim people, and only Muslim candidate will contest in those areas. Which means Muslims will have separate constituency where only Muslim candidate could contest in the election. So these are the two steps, two features of this particular Indian Councils Act or Morley Minto reforms. So the first one, more members to be included into the Central Legislative Council and Provincial Legislative Council. Second, the introduction of a separate electorates, which means the Muslims will have separate constituency from where only Muslims candidates could contest. If it is clear for you, Morley Minto reforms. And the last part of the chapter we have got revolutionary movements. What does it mean? Revolutionary movements. That's the last topic of the particular chapter. Revolutionary movements. So, revolutionary movements means movements that include very radical steps taken by the people. Which means they take up violence to get their goals achieved. So there was this particular growth of revolutionary movements, mostly in Bengal, Punjab and Maharashtra. And the young people, they began to use the force to expel, to remove British from India. So the young people, they took up arms, they took up the source of force, they used the force to expel, to remove British from India. And they formed various secret societies to train the members. Okay, there are two different associations like Abhinava Bharat Society in Maharashtra and Anshulan Samadhi in Bengal. So Abhinava Bharat Society in Maharashtra and Anushilan Samadhi in Bengal, the examples of revolutionary movements. And what did these people do? They began to kill British officers. For example, Chapekar brothers killed two British officials in Maharashtra, and in 1908, the Indian two young leaders called Khudiram Bose and Prafulla Chakim, these two leaders, threw a bomb at a person called King's Ford, the district judge. And in 1912, these people attempted to kill Viceroy called Lord Handrink. Okay, so these are the things done by this revolutionary movement. So there was a growth of revolutionary movements mainly Bengal, Punjab and Maharashtra. The young people believed that by using force they could expel, they could remove the British people from India. The examples like Abhinava Bharat Society in Maharashtra, Anushilan Samadhi in Bengal. And what did they do? They began to kill the British officials. So examples we have given. Chapekar brothers, they killed two British officials in Maharashtra, and in 1908 Khudiram Bose and Prafulla Chakim, they threw a bomb at the district judge called King's Ford. In 1912, they attempted to kill the Viceroy, that is Lord Hardinge. Now, these revolutionaries were not only in India, they were also in Europe and in America. The revolutionaries were also found in Europe and in America. For example, we have got this particular Ghadar party, and what this particular association. It was a revolutionary association, and they had a journal called Ghadar to spread revolutionary ideas. Okay, so Ghadar party had a journal called Ghadar for what? To spread revolutionary ideas. And they sent revolutionaries to organize various uprisings in India. So they had a journal to spread the revolutionary ideas, and they also sent the revolutionaries to organize the uprisings in India. And they have got various names, examples they have given them: Lala Hardayal, V.D. Savarkar. These are the examples for the revolutionaries. Okay, and how did the British people react to all these things? The British people used all their means to stop these revolutionaries. Okay, the person called Kudrian Bose was hanged to death. Aurobindo Ghosh and Barindra Kumar Ghosh were put in jail, and some leaders were given life imprisonment. Okay, this is how the British people reacted to all these revolutionaries. Now, what was the impact of these revolutionaries? Okay, they were considered as national heroes by the people. They taught the spirit of self-sacrifice. It means if you want to attain something, you need to sacrifice something. So they gave the spirit of self-sacrifice, and they began to inspire the people. This was the impact of these revolutionaries. So these are the things that are to be learned in this particular chapter. I hope we are clear with this particular chapter. So we began with the different reasons why Indians were not happy with the British government. We learned about all sections of Indian society, and we learned about the political, administrative, economic unification of the country, spread of modern education, the role that is played by the press, the immediate factors, the controversy, the Ilbert controversy that we have learned, the beginning of early political associations, and the different characteristics of those political associations. Then we learned about the birth of International Congress and its aims, the two different phases of International Congress. The first one, early nationalist; second one is the assertive nationalist phase. Then we learned about today the partition of Bengal, the real reason and the hidden reason, the two different methods, Swadeshi and the boycott, the split that happened in Congress, the Surat split, Morley Minto reforms, the revolutionary movements and their impact on Indian people. So kindly go through the notes along with my video and try to get the answers of the questions given at the end of the chapter. So kindly, by going through these notes, you will be able to find out the answers of all the questions given at the end of the chapter. So kindly go through the answers, and if there is any doubt, you can ask me. I'll try to clarify. So I hope it is clear for you, and we have completed the chapter, and we have one more chapter to be completed. So kindly prepare well for your exam. Their timetable is already out. So kindly start preparing for the exams. Kindly read the textbook. Kindly do not depend only on the question answers or the exercises given at the end of the chapter. Kindly read the textbook clearly. Go through the question answers given at the end of the chapter. If there is any doubt, you can ask me. Go through the notes, and I hope you will be able to get all the answers. Okay children, take care. Thank you.